Hello and welcome back to another episode of Delusional Chaos. And today I'll be talking about my experience of what it was really like being a girl in high school in the UK. So the good, the bad and the delusional, obviously, because it's Delusional Chaos. And I'll be covering all the little moments, from the silly moments to the darker ones, and I'll be deep diving into my high school stories and just what it's like to be a girl in high school in the UK, or just in a UK high school. So let me just set the scene for you. So my school uniform in high school was a long black skirt or trousers, black trousers, and if you were wearing trousers you had to wear your shirt tucked into your trousers. So basically we had to wear like a white shirt as well, and we also had a little blazer and a little tie. So the tie had to be a certain length, and if it wasn't a certain length then you get told off for that as well. It was a little stripy tie, so we had a stripy tie, a white t-shirt, blazer, trouser or skirt, and obviously if you're wearing a skirt most of the time it had to be tights, because they would get a bit funny if you had your legs showing too much, which I can understand certain reasons why, but my school were very strict on uniform. And I left school in 2019, so I was basically in high school throughout the 2010s, and I'm just going to give you obviously a little deep dive into my experience at school, and to kind of give a little bit of an intro of some of the topics. The first one that I kind of want to go into is the pressure that you feel, not only just in school, but kind of the pressure that you are faced with as a girl. Oh my god, the pressure that you're faced with as a girl, and yeah, it can be really difficult. But before I deep dive into it, just wanna say, got my little Red Bull here and sat outside because it's been a beautiful day today, and I just thought, why not come out, film a video, get my podcast on and have myself a little Red Bull and just make this little girly chit chat. And I know it's going to be quite serious, but I also do want to make this video not as serious, because I know I'm quite a serious person and I like to talk about the serious topics, which is the main reason why I created this podcast in the first place, is to talk about the serious topics that no one really talks about. But yeah, definitely this topic right here is one of the things that isn't really talked about as much. Obviously there has been a lot of information about bullying and peer pressure, and there's been so many studies done on it, but I just want to kind of share my experience of dealing with that in a UK high school. So I definitely felt the pressure, and I think a lot of girls around me and a lot of people around me did feel exactly the same as me. Is you are made to believe that you have to be cool, you have to be popular, because there really is like this hierarchy of like, if you are at the bottom, no one wants to talk to you, no one wants to invite you to anything, and if you're just like the middle layer, then you're kind of known but you aren't necessarily popular. And then like the popular kids, like they went to all the parties and they were the teacher's favorites, and they would just get like, I don't know, all the attention. And yeah, you were told, or not told, but shown through, well, told and shown through so many different ways that you had to be popular as well. But yeah, that's just kind of, well, yeah, that's just kind of one of the things that I felt a lot of pressure to, you know, have to do. And in year 7 there was a lot of pressure to have boys be interested in you, and you felt like you weren't good enough if your friends around you, or girls or boys, got you felt like you weren't good enough if your friends around you or other girls got boys but you didn't. And I think from the get-go there was this pressure around you of if you had a boyfriend or not, if boys were interested in you, and if boys weren't interested in you, then no one wanted to be around you. It was just kind of like this constant pressure of like not only trying to figure stuff out for yourself, but also navigating friendships, relationships, like first crushes. It was just such an intense experience, and obviously I know this is a experience that we've all gone through or you're currently facing, and yeah, it isn't really talked about enough, because I feel like there shouldn't be such a pressure to date boys or to have relationships at such young ages, because you're still a child, you're still trying to figure things out, and I don't think there should be this pressure to have to figure things out at that age. Like, you really don't know yourself until you're an adult, and I think it's kind of important to start maybe advising kids to not think about this stuff so early, because you have the rest of your life to think about these things. And I know when you're a teenager you rebel and you do all these things where you're trying to figure things out and learn all your lessons, but I do think more parents should definitely push their kids to stay away from being in a relationship until they're a bit older, or trying to get the other genders like attention. I just don't think it's very good for the mental health, because you genuinely don't even know yourself, and then you're expected to, I don't know, please other people. But yeah, I think that is definitely some of the pressure that I face in school. And kind of like intertwining with that is the constant comparison that you have with other people. So boys and other classmates and other girls would constantly compare me to either my friends or to other girls, and being a girl was really difficult for that reason, because I'm quite a girl's girl. I'll love you till I hate you, do you know what I mean? Like, I don't really dislike people unless you're, I don't want to say a negative person, but if you've necessarily done something wrong, if you haven't done something wrong to me, I don't really have a problem to dislike you. I think, yeah, like, I'll love you till I hate you sort of thing. And I definitely didn't get that vibe from a lot of girls in the school, because, or any of the boys, because they just clearly picked on me for different reasons. I think I was quite outspoken and I was quite confident, especially when I first started, and I've kind of been a person that does what they want in a way, but I also am a slight people pleaser, so I wouldn't always stand up for myself. And I think being at school and having the constant comparison of you're too this, you're too that, like, that definitely did have an effect on how I viewed myself and my confidence and my self-worth. But yeah, that is definitely like something that, you know, had a big effect on my life and my school life. And yeah, it's not obviously great, but we are constantly compared as women, well, constantly compared as just human beings in general, but especially being a woman, you are constantly compared to other women, and other women not usually, but there are a lot of women out there that are just bitter and they aren't happy for other people and they aren't willing to support. They're just so focused on themselves, and they do want to do this whole comparison thing. But I do think, yeah, it's obviously very toxic to people's mental health, and I do just try and have the mentality of they've got their lives, I've got my life, I don't need to interfere with that. And obviously that's something that you learn with time, and it's not just something that is born into some people. But I do think there definitely needs to be something done about this, because yeah, us girls need to support each other more, and I just don't think there needs to be so much negativity, and especially with social media, there's just so much negativity nowadays, and I definitely want to spread a little bit more joy and teach people how to be compassionate to not only themselves but to other people as well. And yeah, that is definitely another thing that I felt pressure for. But another thing that I felt pressure for, or pressure from, was being invited or allowed to go to things that my friends were invited to felt like the worst. And at the age that I was, it did feel really unfair, because my mum was quite strict. She had quite strict boundaries with me, wouldn't let me do things that most kids my age were kind of doing, and I do think that's definitely for a good reason, but she was just being protective of me. And when I didn't get invited, not just because my mum hadn't said no, but just because I wasn't invited, plain blank, it really was soul destroying for me. And that is just kind of how it is being a teenager. It is soul destroying. It feels like your world is over, and I think it's nicer when you grow up, because you realize that people have their own lives and they have their own things going on, and most of the time it's not a reflection on you, it's a reflection on them and what they're going through. And yeah, that is just something that I definitely, had to learn over time. And I think in school it's really hard to feel like you're fitting in or you're accepted, and especially being a girl, because of the constant comparisons and the bitchiness and the rumours, so many rumours. It's just, yeah, a lot of pressure. And there was also a lot of pressure to do well academically, especially for me, because my mum and my family wanted me to do really well, because they would always tell me I'm really smart and I should try really hard. But then I really struggled being able to maintain my schoolwork with my friendships and trying to fit in and do all of that. Like, I really struggled finding my footing and finding out who I was as a person. But I do just think that is kind of the experience of going to school, and especially going to a public school, is it's not cute, it's not fun out there. And I do think, well, from what I've seen on Educating Yorkshire, I do think that schools are making more of an effort to be more considerate about mental health, and certain situations there is like a lot more support out there compared to when I was in high school, which obviously wasn't too long ago. But there is definitely more that can be done to help teach children deal with their anxieties and deal with just general issues, and preparing them for life properly. I mean, in school we didn't learn about how to manage money, how to save. We just got probably like an hour's talk at us when we're all sat on our phones and talking to our mates anyway, because we're teenagers and we're not going to listen to the teacher. I think, like, we should have gotten more than just an hour's PowerPoint about going to the bank and what a credit card is. I know what all of this stuff is anyway. I don't need to be told all of this. Like, teach us things which will actually make a difference. And yeah, I think there's still a long way to go in educating young people, but what do I know, hey? I mean, I went through it, so I think I could probably give them some pointers. So if you guys could just send this to the government and get them to review this footage of, you know, we should probably hit her up to get her, I don't know, to help us out here. Even though they probably be like, who is that random girl just talking online? And her podcast is called Delusional Chaos. So don't know about that one. Don't know if they'll actually reach out. Gone on a tangent anyway. But on to the next little segment in the podcast. I am going to be talking a little bit about the dynamics of being a girl in friendships. And girl friendships, as we all know, well, not as we all know, but it's quite common knowledge that they can be the most beautiful, amazing connections, but also can be the most toxic and evil. Because girls, especially in high school, especially at the age that you are, girls can be horrible. Girls will find the thing that makes you hate yourself or find your biggest insecurity, and they will tell you that every single day until the day that you die, if you want to. If they hate you that much, they will do that. And that's kind of how it definitely felt in school anyway. But yeah, there is just such a divide in school of the girl groups, and if you're not in the group, then you can't hang out with us, you can't sit with us, you can't talk to us. If one of them's falling out of you, you've fallen out the whole group, and it's just war against girls. And it was a horrific time. Like, I just did not have a good time in school for that reason. I think I struggled quite a lot with friendships in school, especially with girls, because I was in a different friendship group pretty much every year, other than up until the last couple of years, I think, until I found like my group of girls. And it was so hard trying to fit into each group because I felt like all of them had really cemented it. And once you had fallen out with your friendship group, then you had to try and fit in with the other groups, and it was really difficult. And sometimes if you didn't have anyone that you wanted to go and sit with, or you felt like you couldn't go and sit with somebody, then you'd go and sit by yourself, which I did do quite a lot throughout my high school experience, of even eating my lunch in the toilets at certain points. But I did have quite a lot of fallouts throughout high school, probably since year 7 right up until I left. Every year there was just normally like a big blowout for me, and somebody had an issue with me, or I had an issue with somebody. I just constantly did fall out with people in school, and I do think that's pretty normal for teenage girls, but I was in the drama a lot. And I don't think anyone is surprised by that at all. But yeah, I was in the drama most of the time, and if I wasn't, I'd probably just join in for fun. That's just the type of immaturity level I had at that rate. But yeah, I did get into some arguments with some girls, which did get me in a lot of trouble. And I remember one time, this was kind of like in year 10, I fell out with this girl who I was quite good friends with, and she was friends with maybe more popular girls than me. And I remember being in the toilets once and them all ganging up on me and shouting and screaming at me, and then my other friend had to come in and basically stand up for me, because I literally had 5 of them screaming in my face, and I was just standing there like probably traumatized, probably trying to give something back, but got shut down real quick. I definitely did get myself into some situations. And another thing is the gossip in school, especially between friendship groups in school, especially as a UK teenager, and definitely with social media and people messaging behind people's backs and things that they post online. Like, people were constantly criticized, and girls are constantly criticized at that age, and it can be very toxic, because you think that you're best friends with somebody, but actually they're talking to a million people around your back. And I do think that definitely has a big impact on your mental health and just your self-worth and your confidence, because if you've got everyone around you who you feel doesn't actually really care about you or doesn't really want to be around you, it can be a very tough place to be in. But yeah, that is kind of one of the little situations of gossip. And another big aspect of being a teenager, being in high school, is your identity and your body image. So I grew up in a time where being skinny was quite idolized, and at the age, obviously, you're meant to have, boys want you to have boobs, and you need to be a certain weight, and you need to look a certain way, and if you didn't, then you just get picked on for it. And that definitely does have a big impact on your mental health. But I also grew up in a time where social media was mostly on the uprise and everyone was using it, and that definitely had a big impact on my identity and the way that I saw my body as well, because I was seeing this unrealistic image online, and filters were so big. They were so big at the time that I was in school, and at the time there wasn't as much honesty on social media. It was more, this is perfect, this is how my life is, your life is bad because you don't have the life that I have. And I guess there is still that aspect to social media, but there is definitely a lot more honesty out there now. And I think especially the content I was consuming at that age, there was a lot of fakeness and a lot of, you know, hush hush behind the scenes, and that definitely did have a big impact on my mental health and on my self-confidence and my body image. And yeah, I definitely do think that if I didn't have social media, I would have been left out, which I did at multiple times because I get my phone taken away. But I also do think that my mental health would probably not be as severely ruined if I didn't have access to social media from a young age. But yeah, that's just how it be. And then another thing that I kind of wanted to go into is, how did teachers, family, other adults respond to struggles girls faced? And I just written down some notes, so I'm just gonna read them out to you. But the teachers, I think they handled smaller things like fallouts better compared to more serious issues. And what I mean by that is they were very quick to sort out a fallout, but when it came to more serious issues, they would kind of just tell you to get on with it. And it was just, you know, not really the best way to handle situations like that. And a lot of girls I know, and I am one of those examples of these girls, were told a lot that they were overreacting when it came to their periods. And in schools it's very strict of you can only go to the toilet at this time and you have to ask to leave, and it's this whole situation. But it's very unfair because a lot of girls struggle with their periods, especially at that age when you're just first starting, and it's a scary enough experience as it is, and it isn't, you know, very pleasant to go through every single month. And in school you were told that you were overreacting or that you couldn't go to the toilet even though you were in so much pain and obviously, you know, just going through it emotionally. And I think that's definitely something in schools, if it hasn't already been, you know, improved on, that should be something which should be allowed. I think that girls should be able to go to the toilet whenever they need to if they're on their period. And I'm not saying that they have to prove that or anything, it's just I do think there needs to be less strict rules on that, because we're only human at the end of the day. And I know there's a aspect of discipline and you don't want kids running around, but I think it is definitely very important that we teach kids to take care of themselves rather than just pushing everything aside just to work. But hey. And the next thing that I wrote down is that the class clowns and the naughty kids got a lot more attention and praise. And what I mean by that is I felt as though the teachers and all of the staff kind of preferred the people that did mess around. I know they would have more character, but for the ones that really tried really hard and weren't as confident and weren't as, you know, didn't stand out as much, I feel like they didn't get as much praise because they were just kind of left out in the, you know, left to the side because they weren't one of the funny ones or they weren't popular. And I hope that has changed in schools a lot more. I think that every kid kind of deserves the same treatment, and I think that making people feel making them feel smaller than they actually are is obviously damaging to the mental health. And yeah, I just do think we should be a little bit more careful with that. Another thing that I've written down is that a lot of the time the teachers just made me feel small and worthless when talking to them, except from a few good ones. And I do think, especially with a lot of the male teachers, there was a lot of I'm telling you to do this so you've got to do it, and you weren't necessarily doing anything wrong, but there was just such a control play, and I just hated that. Don't like it at all. And I just think I'm a human being. I know a child is, you know, not at the same emotional intelligence or same life experience, but I think every child deserves to be spoken to with the same respect that you'd speak to an adult. And I just think some teachers in my school definitely did not have that. And another thing that I wrote down for the families is in terms of like how they dealt with girls' problems, is that I think each experience is very different for each teenage girl, and there is the unsupportive parents versus the overprotective parents, and sometimes there's a bit of an in-between, but most of the time it's kind of the two extremes. And I do think that certain girls got more support and, you know, help with all of their issues that they went through, whereas others didn't get any support at all and were just kind of made to deal with it by themselves, which I think definitely had a big impact on them and their mental health. But yeah, I do think all of the experiences for each family is different, and there is kind of the stereotypes and, you know, the overprotective versus the unsupportive, but I do think that a lot of the time it is kind of depending on the parents and the family that they have around them. But the next thing that I kind of want to go through is my stories from high school, and there's a mix of silly and unserious ones, but also some darker themes. So I'm just gonna, you know, have a little mention of that. But let me just get into my stories. Don't know why I did that, but anyway. So one of my stories is that in year 8 I helped my 2 friends at the time get ready to audition for Britain's Got Talent, and I remember they were singing, oh my god, I can't even remember the name of the song. I think it's Bleeding Love. It is Bleeding Love by Leona Lewis, which is an incredible song, such amazing vocals. And I remember being on break with my girls in the music room whilst they were preparing for Britain's Got Talent, and they didn't actually get through past the first round, but that is one of the stories and memories from school that I definitely remember. And another one is being on the smoking list, and I wasn't really going to mention this, but I thought it is kind of funny that I did start smoking cigarettes in school due to stress, and I wasn't in the best crowd, but I did start smoking cigarettes then, and I got put on the smoking list because I got caught smoking. And yeah, I think it's just really funny the fact that there is a smoking list in the UK and I was on it. And yeah, they would basically just be on the lookout for the smokers, and don't know if that's iconic yet stupid, I don't really know, but we're gonna go with that. And another story is of the time that I was ill in my GCSEs. So I really wanted to do well in my GCSEs. I felt so much pressure, and I basically got really ill because I had stressed myself out so much. And in the papers I was like coughing and sneezing and just crying, because when I'm ill I just start running from every possible hole. Sounds weird. From, I don't know, you get the image, but I was just awful in all of my exams, and I still managed to pass all of them, but I could have got so much better grades compared to what I would have got if I wasn't ill. But hey ho, at least I still got them all. And yeah, I just wanted to share that one because I just think it's hilarious, the fact that I tried so hard, and because I tried so hard that made me ill, and then I didn't do as well. But hey ho, I'm here and living life and whatever. But another one is that I got given an RTL once for not giving over my phone and also not getting off my phone. So I'd been caught twice by the teacher for being on my phone, and I told him, oh, I was just checking the time, which I definitely wasn't. I was definitely, you know, checking Snapchat or something, and he told me off for it, and I was kind of, you know, chatting back to him. And then he sent me to RTL, which is basically like being sent to isolation, and I had to go and sit in isolation for the rest of the day and do the rest of my work and have a detention for it. So that was really fun. And I also have another story of when I was in year 11, I basically chased round this boy who used to be part of my ex-boyfriend's friendship group, and when I broke up with my ex-boyfriend, all of his friends ended up hating me and cyberbullying me and just picking on me, and him and his friends, minus my ex, which is the strangest part of it, is my ex didn't even get involved in this, is all of his friends were just, you know, following my friendship group around and finding wherever we were hanging out and then trying to annoy us. And I think it was one of the last days before we left school altogether, and he basically, so my coat was hanging over the stairs, and it was actually one of my brand new coats, and it was just kind of hanging over the stairs, and this one boy grabbed my coat, and as I realized that someone was trying to put it down, I tried to pull it up, but as that happened, it ripped my coat, and me and my best friend ran down the stairs. We ran after him, we chased him all around this part of the school, and then I remember we went into one of the geography classes, and we were just like trying to, you know, capture him, like to tag team this guy, and we're shouting at him and, oh my god, I can't believe you did that, buddy blah. And then he's just like laughing, giggling to himself, like thinks it's hilarious. And then my friend's like gone completely psycho, not literally, but you know, just gone mental, flipped a table at him. We've like chased him down the stairs. Like I grabbed him at one point because I was like, ah, like it was literally like a mad chicken race just because he ripped my coat. And I don't regret any of it. It was hilarious. What a story to tell. But another story is I did French for GCSE, and that meant that I got to go on the French trip, which was so cute. And I was allowed to go on the French trip, I think it was a week that we went, or less than a week, just under a week. But we went to Disneyland Paris, and that was so fun. I definitely would love to go back to Disneyland Paris. We went around the shops in Paris, and we drove around, and we also went to the McDonald's. We went to loads of fun places like Huda Beauty, and you know, just all the different fun things in Paris. We also went to the Eiffel Tower, and we were meant to go up the Eiffel Tower, but they messed up our tickets, so that was really fun because yeah, we definitely wanted to go up the Eiffel Tower, but I have stood underneath the Eiffel Tower and I do have pictures of it, so I can at least say that I stood underneath it rather than, you know, having to be up it. But, you know, that's fun. And then what else did we do? I'm trying to think. Oh, another thing that we went to is the Louvre. And I didn't really know what the Louvre was until after I'd actually been there. But obviously it's a really famous art museum where the Mona Lisa is, and there's recently been some robbings on that, which I just thought was mad. I can't believe that some people went up in a ladder and stole all of that jewelry, and they did that in like under 5 minutes. I think that's crazy. But I went to the Louvre, and I had a boyfriend at the time, but I managed to attract a fellow French boy, and I obviously was not interested in him, didn't show him any interest, but he came up and he was like, oh, I want to give you my Snapchat, and I'm like, sorry, I've got a boyfriend. But yeah, that was the law in the Louvre. Law in the Louvre, ooh, fancy. Don't know where that came from, but yeah, the law in the Louvre, ooh. What a title. I might just name this podcast that. No, it's not good enough. But anyway, yeah, I had a really good time there. It was so beautiful. I don't think I will ever see anything more beautiful other than if I go back to the Louvre, to be honest. But yeah, had an amazing time in Paris. I did get ill, shock horror. when I was in Paris as well, so the teacher did have to come and look after me at some points, and my friends had to bring me food to my bed some days. But yeah, other than that, I had an amazing time, and I would love to go back to Paris one day because I want to experience it without school and without, I want to explore different parts of Paris, and they definitely have some beautiful places to explore. And yeah, it's definitely a place that I want to revisit. But another story which I want to talk about is almost passing out from running. And I was not the sportiest girl in school. I didn't really like sports except from like netball and just more simpler ones. And I liked working out, as in like going to the gym and stuff, but I didn't really like the other sports as such. And I hated running. I've always hated running. I was gonna say I don't mind running, but I definitely hate running. I don't like running. Catch me running in a year and talking all about it, because that's just how it be. But anyway, no, I definitely hated running, and they made us do like the 1,500 meters, and I almost died because exaggeration, but I almost died, just could not deal with it and was just not having a fun time, and hated running, did not want to do it at all. And yeah, that was just kind of my stories from school. And the next segment of the podcast is reflection questions. So how do I look back on that version of me now? And there is definitely a lot of mixed feelings. Like, I'm very happy and proud and grateful of that little girl, but also I do feel very sad for her, because obviously it's just not nice to go through at all. But what would I tell my younger self? I would tell her to not care about what people think as much, and to just focus on me, and that I'll figure it out eventually. And I just wish that I had taught myself to be kinder to myself from a younger age. But the last question that I wrote down is, how has that experience shaped the woman that you are today, your confidence, boundaries, empathy, or drive to create change? And I think that I went through a lot of the experiences that I went through to be able to help other people and to guide people to finding the inner strength and inner peace that they never really had. And I definitely think it's taught me how to be self-sufficient and to love my own company, and it's definitely taught me a lot about my confidence as well. But my closing question for today's podcast is, how did/does school shape you who you are today? And that is the end of the 7th episode of Delusional Chaos. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section below. And remember that you can like and subscribe for more content just like this. Until then, stay delusional, embrace the chaos, and I will see you again for another episode. Bye.